Welcome to tutorial number 2 in the Blender to Hitfilm export series. In this one we're going to concentrate very much on how to do a successful camera solve and the sort of technicalities that you need to set up to make that successful. Also include a short section on how to calibrate the lens distortion with Blender as well. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's get going. So we're going to try and solve this before we do anything. We've got some work to do around camera data. This is vital to get this right. You can guess a lot of this if you don't know the camera, but I'm assuming you've planned the shot, yeah, so you can get some of these specifications. So we'll just go through these. We'll start off with sensor width. Now this is really important. The default's 35 millimeters. Now I shot this with my Panasonic GH3, and when I looked it up on the internet, the sensor width for this is 17.3, so that's what we use. This is all so you can calculate sort of the field of view correctly. The reason I set that first is if you see here it updates the lens, so if you do it the other way around you're continually going backwards and forth. Aspect ratio, this is 1:1. Yeah, if you're using a different format, then that'd be different. Most times it's going to be 1:1. And then the lens, so I shot this on 25mm. So change that to 25mm. And the next one is lens distortion. There's hardly any distortion on this lens. It's the nice sort of Panasonic Leica Prime, but there is a small amount of distortion. So if your shot has visible straight lines, then you can actually work it out in shot, or at least guess it. There's obviously none here. The other thing you can do is look up on some of the lens web test sites, and they quite often give you lens distortion. For the most part you're just going to be dealing with K1, K2 if you've got like a sort of a fisheye, and then K3 is if you've got extreme variation around the edge of the frame, but most times you're going to be doing K1. Even on my GoPro you can get a good solve just using the K1 setting, and that's what, 5mm. It's quite an extreme fisheye on that. So I'm going to if you have, the other thing you can do is you can calculate it yourself, and so you can shoot some square lines yourself and then store it for your camera. I'll just quickly show you how to do that. So I'm going to open up a new file quickly. So actually I'm going to start a new project. It'd be easier just doing an empty project. So let's go into movie clip editor, and I shot these a while ago when I was just calculating my own cameras. So let's just have a look on here. Where did we store it? Here we go, lens calibration, and this one here. This is not extremely scientific, okay, it just shows you can do it at home. Now this is something I shot. So the way you can calculate this is if you click down here and move from tracking to distortion, brings up a different menu, and you've got the option here with grease pencil. If you click on line, I think you can do Control D and click as well. Click on line, and then really what you want to do is pick a couple of lines, hold the mouse down, draw them across, and then step one going down as well. Yourself not being that accurate with it, you probably need to be a little bit more accurate. I'm just quickly showing you how to do this. Move it down, like so. Okay, and let's zoom into the middle, because I mean that's where you're going to see the most of the distortion. So there's hardly any on this lens anyway. Now some of this may be where I've been a little bit lazy drawing the lines, but I just want to show you the rough idea of how it works. So if you then click on lens data here, so you've got lens distortion here. So now you can actually move, so you can hold on these and drag. Okay, and you'll see here, let me just zoom out for a second and I'll go to extremes. So as you zoom out here, you see how it warps it. So this gives you really sort of a visual representation of what your lens is going to be doing. So the idea is to line it up with the lines. Now I know that there's hardly any distortion on this, but so let's just zoom in, set that back to 0. and you can just move it so that it's looking about right. It's about there, looks about right. And with this middle one I'd put slightly offset anyway. It was at 0.12. I think the actual proper distortion on this one, when it comes on camera, let me have a look at my note. Yeah, so it's like 0.00083, so yeah, like hardly any. But this will give you a good approximation. So that's how to do the lens distortion if you need to. And like I say, it's quite handy if you don't know the camera and you've got buildings in there with straight lines, then you can use this to approximate it. Let's go back to the track shot that we're working on. So I'm just going to, let's just scroll down. So we set the for, okay, so we did, I didn't save the settings. Okay, so we'll just quickly set this again. So we had 17.3 as the width. The other reason it's really important to set this width is that I use this in the calculations when I bring it into Hitfilm to calculate the orientation and how far away you are from the lens and everything. So if you got it wrong in here, then it can throw the Hitfilm side of things out. So again, it's really important to set it. And I'm just going to set the lens distortion for the proper calibration for this. Probably not even worth doing it, to be honest, but hey, I've got the numbers, so I'm going to put them in. Okay, and once you've done this, you can save this as a camera preset. So you can probably see I've probably got one in here. I did one for my iPhone. There you go, and here's one I did earlier for the 25mm. So you can just save them in there. Okay, so that's the main field we set here. The next important thing is on the left-hand side we need to look at. And this is keyframes A and B. So this is where it looks for the initialization of the reconstruction. So it defaults from frames 1 to 30. You can tell it to do keyframe selection. Sometimes that works, most times I found it doesn't. So I'm going to scroll through. So what I tend to do is I like to have sort of start one where we've got either got a major change in motion or around where I want. I know I want the main object tracked in shot. So for here we're looking probably, say, frame 140 to 200 is where I'm thinking it's going to be blocked. So I'm going to start off with that. You can always change these after. Okay, we'll come back to refine in a sec. So we're ready to go, and you don't need to be precious about this. You can just clear solution and hit it again. It doesn't take long to do if it sucks when it comes out. So I'm going to click on Solve Camera Motion. You can see here where it's calculating it. Okay, and it's come back with a solve error of 0.38. Now that's surprisingly good. I thought it was going to be far worse than that. So anything under 1 is vaguely usable. Anything under 5 is better. Between sort of 2 and 3 is really where you're going to have a nice solid track with nothing jumping around. And even then, if you've, don't forget, this is sort of, I think it's really more of a sort of an average, as we'll see in a sec. So yeah, even if you have inaccuracies around this part, you still could get some jittering. So I think we can actually probably do better than that. So what I'm going to show you a couple of techniques now for actually how to refine this more and double check that what you've tracked is accurate, and then we'll go from there. Right, let's get on with refining this. So we've got the solve error of 0.38, and we're going to try and get that down a bit. So we're going to look at the graph view of this motion. So this is introduction to the Blender windows. This drove me mad to start with. I'm just going to quickly show you how to shut them down, otherwise you end up with millions of them, and it really annoyed me until I worked it out. So you can hold any of these little tabs here. You can hold the left mouse button down, move up, it will create a duplicate of the window. These are actually really cool when you get the hang of it. But then if you pick that again by mistake, all of a sudden you've got another one and then another one, and there's no obvious way to close the damn things. So what you do is you grab, there's other ways to do this, shortcuts and that. If you grab hold of it again and drag it down onto the same size window, it closes over the top. Okay, and the same as this one. Right, it took me ages before I worked that out. So it's going to, but once you get used to it, actually it's really damn cool. It's really quick. So it's created a duplicate of this window, and in this top window we're going to see they've got these little options down here, which we have down here as well, which makes it easier. We can look into, and we're going to click on the graph view. Alright, and actually let's just make that a bit bigger. So let's put it down a bit. We're just going to zoom in a bit. Now this is a really useful view. It's showing you the speed with the relevant X, Y and Z axis of the actual tracks. So what you should see are these nice thick red lines here, which means that all these tracking points here are all moving at the same direction. Remember, which they should do, apart from say some outliers. These little things here, where you have, like, if you look at this sort of coming from the middle, which is 0, quickly up to speed, that's where we've added tracks midway through the frame, so they're nothing to worry about. The ones to worry about are things like this at the end. We've only got a couple here, sometimes you get more. You see these outliers here, right, that they're obviously not following the range of the motion of the rest of the track. Now sometimes that's because they're way out in the distance, so they're not moving around as much, and that's legitimate. But as you can see in the shot below, that shouldn't really be the case, because we didn't really track anything in the far distance. So you can just right click on these, and it will highlight, if you look down here, the appropriate tracking marker. So actually I think it was that one there. Let me just check. Yeah, sometimes it gets a little bit confusing. Let's just take everything off, which I'm going to hit A once, which unselects everything, so it's clear which one it is. Oh, yeah, it's that one there. So scrub through the timeline now. So I'd stopped where, okay, so this is where I'd started tracking this. So if you watch, let's have a look at this track. Let's just zoom in here. So we step through it and watch where it hits this bit on the graph. Oh look, you can see it coming. Bang. Okay, so I forgot to tidy up the end of that one. The graph's really powerful for this. So I'm just going to delete after on that. And then we've got this other one here. Now, these probably won't make a great deal of difference because there's only a couple, but we'll have a look anyway. I'm going to hit A again just to deselect everything. And then just right click on these. Why is that not playing? There we go. I find it a bit finicky sometimes with selecting on the graph. Okay, this one up here. I'm sure somebody will write in to tell me how much I suck and how to do it properly. So again, you can see here with a deviation on the end. These are so slight, I don't think they're actually going to make much difference. I was obviously very diligent when I was tidying up. So I'm going to take that off. Let's just have a look though. We were on 3.839. So it's going to clear solution and retract the motion. Well, look at that, 3.6. So you can see how important it is. I was going on earlier about tidying the ends up and making sure the track is true. You can see how important it is just by moving those two little ones there. I've actually had, yeah, for only a few frames, quite a significant impact on the solve error. So yeah, that's worth keeping in mind. So we've already slightly improved it there. The next thing we're going to look at is the average error rate. So there's an additional thing here, the clip editor view you can click on, and this, for each track, it gives you the average of error for that track. So what we're going to do is really going to look for anything in the sort of 0.91 range, and we're going to whiz through and just quickly delete them and see if that has a decent impact or not on our track results. So let's just work our way through here. And probably a way to order them, I'm sure, but there's not that many, so I'm just going to scroll through and visually look at it. Looking pretty good so far. Okay, so there's one. So which one was that popped up there? Was that this one? I'm just going to come down here, hit A just to deselect everything. Yeah. Okay, so this one here is coming in at 0.9, which is quite high. And we've got plenty of other tracks in that frame in that sort of range of motion, so I'm going to delete that. Press X delete, delete that. Same at the top of this tree, I'm going to delete that one as well. Yeah, just save before you do it, so you can just Control Z out of it. But it's worth just checking to see if it has a decent impact or not. May or may not. Oh, there's a big one. Where's that? Okay, so it must be in a different part of the frame. Ah, there we go, it's at the bottom here. I think there's that one. So just check. Yeah. Okay, there's loads down there. Again, I'm going to just delete that. Another big one there. I really wanted to try and get one on that tree. I wondered how well that was doing. Delete that. It's a shame because we haven't really got a lot in that area. Can't see anything obvious here. I really should work out whether I can sort this. I'm sure I can. So let's clear the solution and track that again. Come down a little bit, 3.3. Yeah, so that's looking pretty good. So I'm just going to try a couple of other little things here just to see what happens. I'm going to try letting Blender select the keyframe. Let's see what happens there. Just takes a little while. I think it just works its way through and tries to figure it out. Let's let it go. And then sometimes it does okay with this, sometimes it's terrible. We shall see. Okay, selected the ones it wants to go for. Didn't really do any better than me there. So I'm just going to take that off and we'll go with the ones we want. So the next thing is refine. So although we know our lens size, our focal length, and the lens distortion, I found that sometimes letting Blender just refine it afterwards really helps, because I mean, although we know that data, one, it's an approximation with the lens distortion anyway, and two, because we're not tracking the sort of a full range here, we're only tracking sort of half the depth of it. I think sometimes it's better if you get like a slightly, let it sort itself out. So let's just, again, clear the solution. Let's see what happens. Yeah, nothing to lose. It's refining now. Let's come down again, 3.228. And then if you look in the camera data over here, okay, it's kept the sensor width the same, so it's refined the focal length here, and it's very slightly changed the lens distortion. I think that's good enough. So we'll go on to the next set and set the scene up in Blender and see what we've got. Let's set up the 3D scene. I'll make this bottom window a bit smaller. I'm going to swap this top view over now. You can just load whatever you want in there. So we'll load the 3D view into it. This is the default 3D view. I'm going to leave the square there for now. We can drop that into our scene and see if it sits still. So right click on the camera to select it. And we can also select it over here on the right hand side. And we need to tell the camera to use the data that we've collated from the track. So there's a constraint. So we're going to click on the little chain here. So you've got the camera object because we've got that selected. Select the constraint, and we're going to go for camera solver. Okay. So you can see here, it's pulled all these little points in, which are the little track points here. These aren't actually nulls, by the way. I'll run through that in a bit, but they're representation of where everything is. So if we hit 0 now, it takes us to a field of view from the camera. Okay, and you can see the camera's moving. It doesn't really help us understand what the track is about. So there is there's some options on the bottom here. Let me just scroll up. And we're going to do this manually because actually I think you get a lot more control over it than trying to automate it. So there's a reconstruction tab here, or you can move from tracking to reconstruction, which loads up things. So it's got various tools for setting the X and Y axis, and yeah, the floor and things. Honestly, it's unless you know what you're doing, you're just going to end up getting confused. It's really a lot easier than that. The bit we do want to do though is set as background. So we're going to say use this clip for the camera as the background. There we go. So we're just going to minimize this now. Okay. We can just scroll through here. Actually, even though that cube's sort of sitting there in the way, and that's tracking pretty sweet. And you see everything sort of sitting around. It's quite a bit of jerky footage anyway. That's quite nice. So let's set up the floor plane for this. So if you press, remember in the earlier tutorial, you've got your T and your N for the left and right. So if you hit N, it brings up a load of options here for the object. So it's the object that we've got selected. So I'm just going to press 0 to come out of that view. So you can see by default the camera's at an angle focused on the cube. This little thing here is the 3D cursor. We'll use that in a sec. Okay. So with the camera, we're just going to set it up. It's point of view shot, so we're going to set it up like that. So we're going to go for, we're just going to center it first of all. Okay, so 0, 0, 0, just so you can see where it sits. So let's put it right smack bang in the middle. Okay, so don't forget that it's Z is up in Blender, and the export script converts that and everything for you. So we want it to be, so let's say 1.8 up, because that's giving us about sort of head height. If you imagine it was in meters, and we're going to set it back sort of -8 meters from the scene. And then in the rotation here, so 90 degrees in Blender is the camera pointing straight ahead. And again, that gets converted because in Hitfilm, that'd be 0, and then just 0 these two out. Okay, so if you hold down the middle mouse wheel, so you can see now we've got the camera pointing straight ahead. It's pretty much aligned to the floor plan, so if we hit 0, okay, the floor plan's a little bit wonky. I mean, it doesn't really matter. That's how it will come across into Hitfilm. I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Okay, so let's just drop the cube into the scene and have a little look. So if we just right click on one of these, and if we do Shift S, it brings us up some options. So we're going to put the 3D cursor to that selected point there, and then we're going to highlight the cube and do Shift S, and then we're going to move the cube, so with the selection, to the cursor. Okay, so it's dropped into the screen. So if we hit S to scale, remember this from earlier, I'll just make it like that, a bit smaller like that. Okay, and then I'm just going to highlight the camera again. So it's just scrolling on the camera there. And you can set the opacity of this background as well. So it's just to change that. If I can remember where it is. Oh, background images, must be that. And I always forget what this is. There we go, opacity. So I'm just going to put this up to 100% just so we can see it. And let's hide the track markers as well. That should be around here somewhere. Motion tracking, turn that off. Okay, so let's just gently scrub through this. No, got a slight bit of jitter there, but some of that may just be where the cube's not anti-aliasing. It looks to me like more than that and they're actually moving. I think all things considered, that's looking pretty good. Yeah, I think that's just that's just sort of aliasing as that cube's getting re-rendered. Cool, I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, let's just turn the motion tracking back on again. So I'm going to highlight the cube. I'm just going to delete the cube now, I don't need that. Let's get it out of the way. So what's handy when you move it into Hitfilm is to actually have some sort of reference points so you can see where it is in 3D space. So we're going to, I know I'm going to put the object in here, so I'm just going to create, I'm only going to create one, I think, just a null to get exported. So you can click on one of these track markers. Let's just do a different one. So here, don't forget you can always offset it from there anyway when you bring it into Hitfilm. Again, so then we'll do Shift S and then move the cursor, 3D cursor to the selected point here. And then I'm going to do, well, you can do Shift A or you can just do Add. So Add and then Empty. These empties are all the same. I'm just going to choose one with arrows because I like them. Okay, let's just zoom in there. Alright, so that's created an empty there at that location. So you can just rename that here if you want and that get copied across. I know. Alright, and when we do the export, it'll only export any of the empties that you have highlighted. It'll always export the camera, but you just do right click on, shift right click on the empties that you've created. So I'm just going to do that one, that's all we need for that scene. So there we go, so we're actually ready to export now. So in tutorial 3, I'm going to show you how to install the export script, and then we'll export into Hitfilm and we'll see what we have.